Night-Adapted-Ch.9. We had spent the day without food, but we were not really hungry. We were exhausted. My father had walked with neighbors as far as the ghetto's gate. They first had been taken through the main synagogue, where they were searched to make sure they were not carrying away gold, silver, or any other valuables. There had been incidents of fighting. "When will it be our turn?" I asked my father. "The day after tomorrow, unless things work out. A miracle, perhaps." Where were the people being taken? Did anyone know yet? No, the secret was well kept. Night had fallen. That evening we went to bed early. My father said, "Sleep peacefully, children. Nothing will happen until the day after tomorrow, Tuesday." Monday went by like a small summer cloud, like a big dream in the first hours of dawn. Determined to prepare our backpacks on baking breads and cakes, we no longer thought about anything. The decision had been delivered. That evening, our mother made us go to bed early. To keep her strength, she said. It was to be the last night spent in our house. I was up very early. I wanted to have time to pray before leaving. My father had risen before all of us to look for information in town. He returned around 8 o'clock. Good news, we were not leaving town today. We were only moving to the small ghetto. This is where we were to wait for the last transport. We would be the last to leave. At 9 o'clock, the previous Sunday scenes were repeated. Policemen swinging clubs were shouting, "All Jews outside!" We were ready. I went out first. I did not want to look at my parents' face. I did not want to cry. We remained sitting in the middle of the street like the other 2 days earlier. The same hellish sun, the same thirst. Only there was no one left to bring us water. I looked at my house, in which I had spent years looking for my God. Yet I felt little sadness. My mind was empty. "Get up! Roll call!" We stood. We were counted. We sat down. We got up again. Over and over. We waited impatiently to be taken away. What were they waiting for? Finally the order came. "Forward, march!" My father was crying. It was the first time I saw him cry. I had never thought it possible. As for my mother, she was walking, her face a mask, without a word, deep in thought. I looked at my little sister, Tispora, her blonde hair, nicely combed, her red coat over her arm, a little girl of 7. On her back, a bag too heavy for her. She was clenching her teeth. She already knew it was useless to complain. Here and there, the police were beating people in their clubs. Faster! I had no strength left. The journey had just begun, and I already felt so weak. "Faster, faster! Move, you lazy good-for-nothings!" the Hungarian police were screaming. That was when I began to hate them, and my hatred remains our only connection today. They were our first oppressors. They were the first faces of hell and death. They ordered us to run. We began to run. Who would have thought that we were so strong? From behind their windows, the non-Jewish neighbors watched as we passed. We finally arrived at the destination. Throwing down our backpacks, we dropped to the ground. "O God, Master of the universe, in your infinite compassion, have mercy on us." Chapter 10. The Small Ghetto. Only 3 days ago, people were living here. People who owned things we were using now. They had been exiled, and we had already forgotten about them. The chaos was even greater here than in the large ghetto. I visited the rooms that had been occupied by my Uncle Mendel's family. On the table, a half-finished bowl of soup, a plate of bread waiting to be baked. Everywhere on the floor there were books. Had my uncle meant to take them along? We settled in. What a word! I went looking for wood. My sisters lit a fire. Despite her fatigue, my mother began to prepare a meal. "We cannot give up, we cannot give up," she kept repeating. People's attitudes were not so bad. We were beginning to get accustomed to the situation. There were those who even spoke optimistically. The Germans were running out of time to exile us, they argued. Sadly, for those who had already been deported, it would be too late. As for us, chances were that we were allowed to go on with our sad little lives until the end of the war. The ghetto was not guarded. We could enter and leave as we pleased. Maria, our former maid, came to see us. Sobbing, she begged us to come with her to her village where she had prepared a safe shelter. My father wouldn't let us go. He told me and my big sisters, "If you wish, go there. I shall stay here with your mother and the little one." Naturally, we refused to be separated. Chapter 11. Night. No one was praying for the night to pass quickly. The stars were out, reminding us that one day, just like the stars, our light would die. One day, nothing would be left in the sky but dark stars and unseeing eyes. There was nothing else to do but to go to bed, in the beds of those who had moved on. We needed to rest, gather our strength. At daybreak, the despair had lifted. The mood was more confident. There were those who said, "Who knows? They may be sending us away for our own good. The front is getting closer. We shall soon hear the guns, and then we will be saved." And this whole business of deportation is nothing but a big joke. They just wanted to steal our valuables and jewelry. They know that it has been buried and that they will have to dig to find it. So much easier to do when the owners are on vacation. On vacation! We didn't really believe these things, but it helped pass the time. The few days we spent here were as comfortable as they could be, mostly calm. People were nice to each other. There no longer was any distinction between rich and poor. We were all people with the same destiny, still unknown. Chapter 12. Saturday, the day of rest, was the day chosen for our exile. The night before, we had sat down to the traditional Friday night dinner. We had said our prayers over the bread and the wine and ate the food in silence. We knew that we were gathered around the table together for the last time. I spent that night going over our memories and ideas and was unable to sleep. In the morning, we were in the street ready to leave. This time, there were no Hungarian police. It had been agreed that the Jewish government would handle everything. The group headed toward the main synagogue. The town seemed empty. But behind the windows, our friends of yesterday were probably waiting for the moment when they could go into our homes and steal our money and valuables. The synagogue looked like a large railroad station, baggage and tears. There were so many of us we could hardly breathe. The 24 hours we spent there were horrible. The men were downstairs, the women upstairs, prohibited from going outside. People went to the bathroom in a corner. The next morning, we walked toward the station where a group of cattle cars was waiting. The Hungarian police made us climb into the cars, 80 persons in each one. They handed us some bread, a few pails of water. They checked the bars on the windows to make sure they would not come loose. The cars were sealed. One person was placed in charge of every car. If someone managed to escape, that person would be shot. 2 Gestapo officers strolled down the length of the platform. They were all smiles. All things considered, it had gone very smoothly. A whistle sounded through the air, the wheels began to move, and we were on our way. Chapter 13. Lying down was not an option, nor could we all sit down. We decided to take turns sitting. There was little air. The lucky ones found themselves near a window. They could watch the countryside race by. After 2 days of travel, thirst became intolerable, as did the heat. Free of normal rules, under cover of darkness, some of the young lovers touched one another, without any thought of others. Alone in the world, the others pretended not to notice. There was still some food left, but we never ate enough to satisfy our hunger. Our idea was to save for tomorrow. Tomorrow could be worse. Suddenly, the train stopped. The door opened. A German soldier stepped in with a Hungarian soldier who was there to translate. "From this moment on, you are the authority of the German army. Anyone who still owns gold or watches must hand them over now. Anyone who will be found to have kept any of these will be shot on the spot. Secondly, anyone who is sick should report to the hospital car. That's all. The Hungarian lieutenant went around with a basket and took the last possessions from anyone who had kept them. There are 80 of you in the car, the German officer added. If anyone goes missing, you will all be shot like dogs. The two left. The doors were shut. We had fallen into the trap. The doors were nailed. The world had become one sealed cattle car.